The next speaker is Saba, Valadkhan, who is going to talk about the view from the ground floor, trials and tribulations of junior women faculty. Saba is fascinating. She was born, raised in Tehran, went to medical school in Tehran, and very smart, placed fourth in the whole country. It's a big country with a lot of people, in the nationwide Basic Sciences Medical Board exam. She's been in the U.S. since 1996 to attend grad school at Columbia University, studying small nuclear RNAs in the human spliceosome. Thesis was recognized with an award from the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center in Seattle. So she'll be talking to us about trials and tribulations. Saba?
Thank you very much for the introduction and also for this wonderful opportunities to discuss with you some of the issues that junior women faculty have. I think being an assistant professor is really one of the most critical aspects of being a woman scientist, because this is when the pipeline becomes very leaky. So I think it's a really important time to look into and see what happens during this time. Thank you very much. So telling you a little bit about what I have learned from talking to people, and I should just mention that compared to the very well-studied and very well-considered information that we've been hearing yesterday and also in the previous years, my information would be by necessity very anecdotal. I have talked to maybe 30, 40 people, all of them junior assistant professors, and most of them, I'm close to some of them, but because being discriminated against is a very sensitive issue, they don't necessarily open up. So I haven't been close enough to most of them, so this is going to be very, very incomplete. But I think it would give us an idea of what is going on. So I guess, yeah, so the good thing, starting with the great news, is that happy stories exist. There is not a large number of them, maybe like 30%, but still that's great. So there are some women that have had careers like it is supposed to be, haven't experienced any discrimination. They feel completely happy, they are doing well, and they feel that they are very fulfilled and it's gonna go well from now on also. So that's fantastic. So I guess that's the major success story of the efforts of all of us. So we really need to congratulate ourselves on that. But there are also horror stories. And the horror stories, I feel, haven't changed really through time much. So I'm not going to be tiring you by just enumerating all of them, but it's the same things that we have had in the past. So there is really a number of people, and unfortunately the number is dwindling, but there is still some people that think that being a woman is equal to being less competent and being a second-rate citizen. And so this translates into being appreciated less, receiving less respect, being given fewer resources, and of course, the women are a lot more likely to be sacrificed for the perceived common good, and also overlooked for opportunities, promotions, and a lot of other things. So we know all of these. Neither of them have changed, and these have been discussed in great detail. I'm not going to be going through them. But I think it's really important to realize that this is really creating a vicious cycle, because once you have gone through all of these, you're less likely to be successful, and then because you're less successful, then you're perceived to be less competent than a second-rate citizen, and then it cycles through this. And then this also has a really terrible impact on our newer colleagues. When I look at my male colleagues that are my age, they really don't seem to have an inherent discriminatory or biased view. But if they see that their women colleagues aren't doing as well, then they will start developing this. So maybe there's something wrong with them, that they're not succeeding as much as us. And so we are basically creating a new generation of people who have small biases, at least, thinking that something is wrong with the women. They are not doing quite as well as we are. And so that's, I think, a really important thing to take into consideration. So I'm going to be, so I think it's really, really crucial for us to share experiences, especially bad stories. Bad stories should be told loud and clear all over, so everybody can know. It's important because, first of all, raising awareness that there is a problem. The problems aren't in the past. 21st century still has a lot of problems for women scientists. I think it's really important, and also both for men and women to hear these stories. And also, I think the fact that if we know that there have been stories, have been issues in the past, we can share solutions. We can learn from other people's experiences, and so we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel every single time. So that definitely helps. And I think also the fact that if we know that there is a problem and the problem is big, then we can share share ideas, and take collective action. And I think that is really, really crucial. So that probably would be the thing that would ultimately solve the problem. So I think being women, and men who care, I think it's really important for us to do mentorship, to share the experiences that we've had, and help younger women. I think a lot of times senior women or senior faculty, men and women, feel a little bit perplexed by the behavior of junior faculty. They feel that they are not trained enough, or they are not taking responsibility the right way, or they are having unusual reactions to things. And I think it's sort of like seeing somebody who's walking on a slippery slope and not knowing that they are on a slippery slope. So we may think that the reactions are unexpected and weird, but this is because we don't know what situation they are in. I think it's always good to give people the benefit of doubt, even if people are behaving in ways that they shouldn't. Maybe they're reacting to something that we are not seeing. So I think that's important to take into consideration. And also something else that has been discussed, and I don't want to go through it in great length because it was discussed at some length yesterday, is the fact that senior women faculty sometimes don't seem to be as supportive as they should be. And it's a shame. I really think we really do look forward to interacting with senior women. They are all role models, and it really feels terrible to see that they are just, they're not interested to talk to us in meetings. A lot of times, men are actually a lot more accessible in my experience, and I've asked this because I've had this bad experience. Many junior women feel the same way, that men are more accessible than women. They just don't seem to want to talk. They don't seem to want to talk to you, and that really hurts. And also the fact that sometimes they are so harsh on other women. And we heard this story that maybe they are trying to prepare women for facing the harsh reality. I don't think there is any necessary prep course for going to hell. So when you're there, you'll learn. But I think instead of that, maybe if that is the intention, maybe they can just raise awareness that there is some world called hell. And if you're aware that there might be issues, then you would be better prepared to deal with them. So I think. So I'm going to be telling you a little bit, and I hope, so is it possible for us to stop the videotaping by any chance? Please, thank you.
Obstetrics and gynecology, which had some particular sexual overtones. And one of the things I found is that many of our young women literally were forced to have sex to keep their jobs. This was not uncommon in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s. But that's not what the real problem is now. It's humiliation, like what they've done to you. Fortunately, you like your science enough, you're tough enough. Most people would be destroyed under what's happened. So you've already shown your mettle, so to speak. And you'll be able to help other women in the future when you have time. I mean, right now is not the time. But surviving it, number one, gives you a huge amount of strength. And people don't understand how you did it. And telling your story is helpful, but you don't want it to become overpowering. So as you progress, you will find that, as I said, that people will start to come to you, or they'll look at you and they won't know how you survived. And this young woman at Harvard, who's now in her 50s, who major programs are against because they don't like the fact she overturned the apple cart in the early 90s and accused her of fraud and everything else, survived all of this. So the accusation of fraud is used to use up your time. They give it to you. You have to look at how many months did you spend redoing those projects?
4 years.
It can destroy you, and that's its intent. It's not that they believed you committed fraud. They know that by accusing you of fraud, that they're forcing you to do things. This other woman was pregnant and had an abruption of her pregnancy during this period of being accused. And needless to say, I got every lawyer on Wall Street to help her. I was furious. But it doesn't stop. And to see what's happening to you and to see how it's morphed. But one of the real tools is accusing people of fraud. It's really deadly. And but as I said, I just want to reemphasize, you're going to succeed. It's not going to, you're not having an easy time. And then later, you're going to be surprised at all these people who, they helped you and they were important in your discovery. So just laugh.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes, please.
If you talk to college students, are you hearing similar stories, similar to yours?
There's this particular case in Rockefeller that was pretty bad. And I've heard that there have been 2 cases. I barely know the other person. But there are many women who tell me bad stories, but nothing quite like that. Maybe they haven't confided in me. But even minor things, like one of my colleagues were telling me that men, she's talking to men in a meeting, and she's like me, short, and one of them uses her head as a place to rest his hand, like it's some sort of tabletop. Yeah, so, or that there was a male colleague that she was going back from a meeting with, and the guy spanked her, just saying, "Oh, you're such a naughty girl." And she told some other more senior women in a sort of a women's gathering, and they blamed her for it. They said that that's what you have done is inappropriate, to return back with a guy from the bar in the dark.
I have another question.
Have you found a lot of help and support from other women who are more senior to you from institutions outside of Cleveland Clinic? I mean, have you found that there's a lot of support in guiding you towards solving the situation that you're in?
So I guess that's my no, and it's my fault because I haven't told my story. I thought that these kinds of things are so damaging that it's best if I don't tell anyone and just solve it by myself. So now that I see things from my current perspective, I see how wrong that was. I should have told everyone. But I foolishly thought that this is a minor thing. I'm a tough woman. I can get things done. The science is going well, but I didn't realize that if you don't publish it, if you're barred from publishing, it doesn't matter what you do in the lab.
Could I suggest we think about a Nancy Hopkins kind of accumulation of these kinds of harassments and doing a report on it. I can remember as a young faculty at Maryland, not personal, but hearing from the graduate students that a fellow faculty member was constantly harassing them. Not just 1 or 2, but most of the women. He felt it was his right. So I just wonder if we should think about this. This is very, very serious.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to contextualize this in terms of the law as well, because I think everyone here who is in an institution knows that there are legal remedies, some better used and enforced than others. But your experience is actually, it is an assault. It is, at the least, it is harassment. And there are legal remedies. And as you said, going it alone is difficult. But there are also hostile environment issues, which institutions are liable for. Hostile environment is a actionable case to be brought. And having been, I've been in many, many university contexts as an administrator. I've been harassed. I've dealt with lots of these cases myself, personally and on behalf of institutions. And I'll give you one of the best examples that if you're in an institution that understands its liabilities, and everyone should, because this can become a really big issue for the organization. When I was vice provost at Princeton, we had many problems. We had graduate students in warring departments throwing each other's papers out onto the floor and setting them on fire. There were myriads of balkanizing and petty bullying examples. But we had one department, very enlightened, excellent department chair, no women on the faculty. It was in engineering. And 7 women in the programs, the 7 women graduate students came to the chair and said, "We are working in a hostile environment, and we are extremely uncomfortable. We feel this will affect our careers." The chair came to me as vice provost, and I and the associate dean of the faculty sat down, and with the council, general counsel for the university, sat down with the entire faculty and said, we're not going to name names, but you are creating a hostile environment, and this is endangering the university. And, basically a couple of the faculty members said, well, so what are you going to do about it? And we said, well, we have remedies. There are remedies for a hostile environment, including pay reductions for people who are actually found to be doing this, and problems for your department and problems across the board. Won't hire somebody else into this area, will reduce your number of graduate students. There are consequences, but the best thing to do, since it's against the law and since we're unhappy with you and since you're not helping your students, is to clean up your act and do it together and make sure that you understand what your responsibilities are in a public forum like this. So what you've done is really courageous and important, and because you're telling your story, other people will step up and bring these questions to light. But otherwise, academia, it's the Wild West. Everyone has their own lab, they have their own reputation, they have their own discipline, and there's so many good people, but occasionally you get something that really just doesn't work, and that person ends up with some power. So I think the more we understand in our institutions what the legal remedies are, but also the ways in which your department chair and your dean and others are responsible for understanding and taking those steps, that's really important.
Thank you very much.
So I have two suggestions, and one is that I think part of the problem here is recognizing that you had a problem. And so there could be a questionnaire developed where, there's various questions asked and responses, and if you score 3 on any of them, that's a problem, and, things like this to sort of guide people that there are issues and they need to do something about it. The other suggestion that I have is that we look at the American Physical Society, which does the climate of departments, and they're willing to go in and actually assess the departments and give advice. And I think they also rate departments, so they can go back and see how they've done after they've been guided a little bit on how to modify their behaviors. And so I think it's a very good model. I looked at it once, so if my description is a little sketchy, that's why, but I think it's something that we should look at more.
Thank you very much. I actually had put something along the same lines here, but I love your idea.
Okay. So I want to pick up on something that you said. You said a few times, and I totally understand why you're saying it, this idea that this could, how could this still be happening in the 21st century? So I think we need to realize the genesis of this and the solutions. For better or for worse, there are always going to be people who act badly, right? And sometimes those people are going to get into power. So that's just the unfortunate fact of life and statistics. What should change and what we should expect to change are the institutional safeguards, right? And your idea about resources and websites and blogs are a great one. I mean, so I would imagine that there probably are lots of resources at Case that you're not aware of, right? There is the ombudsman, right, who exists exactly for these kinds of things, right? If your department chair, and there's a whole hierarchy, right? If your department chair is not helpful and is part of the problem, go to the dean, go to the provost, right? As has been aptly said, this is a disaster, right, from an institutional perspective, and there are people who are, if for only the financial interest of the institution, will pay attention to these kinds of things. And correct, and those things are coupled, right? And so I understand your position in that, coming fresh out of graduate school, you don't know of these things, but so I think part of the process is spreading the word about this and not being afraid to connect wherever you can connect. I mean, even, I wanted to ask you, did you talk to your PhD advisor about this?
Yes, but too late, because
Yeah.
they were friends, so he knew the guy.
Geez.
So but obviously we're very different people. So
Sure.
I guess my problem was that I was so worried that if they are friends with this gentleman, for example, one of the board members here is also friends with the gentleman who has harassed me, and so I didn't say anything in the previous years here because I just don't know how
Yeah.
people would react. Would they blame me for it, or
Yeah.
would they really realize that it's his fault?
So, I mean, that's why kind of identifying these university resources are really important, right? So you need to get to the associate dean for research in your college, or the vice provost for research, or the ombudsman, who can say, like, we value you, right? We value every faculty member here, and the important thing is connecting you with the resources that are available. So, I mean, I think there's always going to be this randomness. There's always going to be people who are causing problems, and we need to not reward them. We need to, punish them appropriately. But also the solution, I think, are the institutional infrastructures to combat it.
Exactly. And I think there should be a trust in those infrastructures. I'm not sure I trust them. That is, I guess. But I completely agree with you. That should have been the way.
I agree with her. I'm very cynical. There was a department chair, and Jan, you probably remember, sociology at Maryland. He was essentially a rapist, is what he was, and he never really suffered from it. I mean, the university just closed ranks. That's why I think it's probably time for just as Joe Handelsman did, to figure out how to do a report to collect a systematic review and collect data, so no one person gets fingered and disposed of by the collective enclave. Madeline?
Well, I was going to say, I know we're running very late, but and I'd like to talk to you at lunch about some of the things that the American Chemical Society can offer. I was kidding around with you. You're a biochemist? Are you a member of ACS? Honestly, I think if you had been a member of ACS, this would never have happened, because we have a huge support system for women chemists. We've had as I'll say later, we've had a women's chemist committee looking at issues like this and helping other women since 1927. So I do want to talk to you about what we can help you going forward, and any project that you would want to do. I'm not saying this isn't a problem among women chemists, but we get these calls from women, and we act on behalf. We go to the universities, and so we're very active in this. And I certainly am not pretending that it still doesn't exist in chemistry, but yeah.
That's a great resource. Thanks for this. Can I just have one last comment? Because I just want to echo what everyone else said here and what Mary and Lawrence said. I agree that there's always going to be these issues, and sometimes it's not a man, sometimes it's a woman. So you really have to have power in your situation, and part of having power is documenting what happened to you, whether it's electronically written, even tape recording. Even though that doesn't hold up in court, it actually is proof that you're not crazy and you're not making it up. We also have to reach out to legal, because they're the ones that can be our advocates. And as Lawrence had said, there's always a boss of every boss. So if it's your chairman, there's a boss of the chairman, it's the dean, it's the president. And even though you say that the institution is only out for themselves, legally, they have to support you if everything's documented. And as she was mentioning before, there's so many women's groups in science that have these resources to help other women. Florence and I this year have been working with the American Medical Women's Association on a physician in crisis website, really for these reasons, to give resources of legal, of laws that are there to protect you anonymously.
I do think we have to move on, but thank you for your bravery in sharing.